Alright guys, welcome to Breakfast with Bobby. Got started out, you got 2 eggs in the pan, going for the third. Not really sure what episode we're on, because I'm a day behind and about 45 minutes behind what I should be right now, but hey, that's okay. This morning's rant, I want to talk about this guy named, it's Mike Van Wick, I believe, and Jeff Napier. By the way, I'm waiting for more details to come out. However, I'm going to tell you, I'm already 98% decided on how I feel on it, and we're going to talk about that. Because our buddy Mike has done a massive disservice to a very large population that already kind of had a lot working against us. I know the stuff I'm going to talk about, by the way, first world problems. 100% first world problems. Grand scheme of things, probably not on top of what's all wrong in the world. But that's how that dude that's how that Mike guy, how he just made people like me look. And what I mean by people like me, I am a large guy. I'm not bald yet, but it's coming. I've got a beard. I have a tattoo. I will have a lot more, I'm assuming. I want a lot more. And I'm also the guy that can be a little verbally forward. I am the guy who will tell you if you are getting to a point to where, hey, this is going to elicit a response that's not verbal, we should stop, I'm going to walk away. Now, sometimes it's not that peaceful, but I'm usually the first guy to let somebody know if they're walking towards a situation that's going to lead to an altercation. And you let them know, that way they can make a decision of, okay, this is not where I want to be. So it is what it is. I feel like that's just man law. However, I digress. There's some other stuff we got to talk about before that. So this big guy, as people call him, he's allegedly 6 foot tall. This is Van Wick, by the way. Allegedly, he's 6 foot tall. He's 260 pounds. Well, dude, you're not that cool because I left high school at 6'1", 267-ish pounds, and I had abs. All right, and no tattoos and really long hair. So, yeah, it took you this long in life to get as cool as I was in high school. You failed. Gonna toss it out there. Now, something else. I watched Jeff's video. And trust me, again, if you know me, when somebody wants to get carried away on social media, I'm the first person to say, hey, let's have a conversation in person, just so there's no confusion on what's happening right now. So I definitely can appreciate if something is worth confronting somebody about, I'm going to do it in person, not on social media. I can appreciate that. However, Jeff was actually really nice to Mike, because I feel like Mike Van Wick I feel like he's smart in ways, but I feel like fitness is not the area he wants to try and go nose to nose with a science-based professional on. It's not. There's a lot of us big guys out there that we know a lot. We've got a lot of stuff figured out. But there's also some science in this game that you simply cannot deny. And also, when you throw different things into the mixture, is what we'll say, and you are of any level of genetic superiority, you doing less than optimal will get you more than most people's optimal. It just is. It just is that way. So I think as a big guy, it's pretty easy sometimes to go, oh, well, screw you, look at me, look at you. And there definitely is place for that. I do believe that if I am just so far more progressed beyond where you are in a certain area, there is just a shut up and listen, because what I know is probably closer to right than what you know. However, I digress. That was not this situation, right? There's always been a toggle between the exercise science community and then the big guys, right? The science-based, we'll call them fitness professionals, and the guys who are just like train hard, eat protein. Well, and you know what? There's a really nice merriment that happens between the two in the right place, in the right time, with the right people. However, this was not that. So that's kind of the short and the long of it. The little guy, by the way, the little guy who I've heard he's 5'5". I'm going to say we'll call him 5'5" to 5'7", just in case the internet's wrong. 180 pounds, natural athlete. I want to say he's a Canadian a national Canadian champion in natural bodybuilding, and I think he's got the natural Canadian bench press record. So the dude has done some things. He's done some things and some stuff, and he's smart and has a large following. Okay, cool. So he makes a video and embarrasses Mike Van Wick ultimately, because there's this really crappy side of the fitness industry where it's a bunch of guys who are really big, don't know why they're really big. got a bunch of tattoos and made up some fake stories about who they were and why prison made them tough. Well, as somebody with a less than fantastic, self-induced, but less than fantastic backstory, who bounced for a decade, who had to fit the stereotype because I had a 9 to 5 and I bounced at 3 bars at one time. Or, well, not the same night, but spread out throughout the week. So when you already had to create a kind of stereotype, it's hard, because for me, that was life. And then you see guys like Mike, who are grown-ass men. And by the way, I don't bounce anymore. I don't go looking for these altercations like when I was young, because I have too much to lose, right? I had too much to lose then. I was just too stupid to realize it. So now, yeah, there are words that will make me fight. They exist. They happen. Don't tell people what they are. But I feel like every man has that marker. The funny part is, you're wrong, and this is why, quote, science is not the reason, and those are not the words. So, moving forward, if you're going to play the I'm the man card, which is what I really feel like Mike on some level thought he was doing, like, oh, you're going to tell me I'm wrong on social media and you're so little, well, we're just going to get nose to nose and figure it out. Fitness isn't fighting. You're not tough. All right? You're not. If you were not tough before you became covered in tattoos, lost all your hair, and got a bunch of body tattoos, then I'm sorry, you weren't tough after you got them. It doesn't work that way. And I know allegedly this dude was a bodyguard. I'm going to tell you, as somebody, again, who bounced for over a decade and did some pretty cool walk around with people work and, some not so cool work. And I got to meet real bodyguards, right? Because getting that job ultimately isn't very difficult, and getting the licensing, the basic required, is not very difficult. So it's kind of like strongman coaching. There's a wide range and there's levels. So just because some 6 foot, 260 pound guy a decade ago was a bodyguard for a celebrity doesn't mean he would have been remotely useful in a situation where you'd want to have a bodyguard. He just convinced somebody that he was. It's not a terribly difficult thing to do in today's society. So I encourage people, when you look at this guy and look at people like him, especially in the fitness industry, don't let their appearance alone be what makes you decide who they are or how tough they are. As a matter of fact, they probably have less in common with you than you would actually believe, and you are probably tougher than they are. Next step in. You walk up to this dude who's 5 or 6 inches shorter than you potentially, almost 100 pounds less than you, maybe over 100 pounds, depending on where Jeff is in his competitive season, right? And you don't walk up to him and open up the altercation. Now, I'm not saying you walk up and ask for an ass whooping. And there are certainly, and that's going to be a mess, God bless it. You guys like the old man bend over? There are certainly times where, there are no words before altercation. Seldom should there be. But that's a situation where Mike was attempting to dominate another man, so he did so by walking up to him and, without warning, placing his hand in a spot where you really don't ever touch somebody unless you are trying to keep them from hurting themselves or hurting the people around them. And again, even bouncing, like we knew, you don't touch somebody's airway. You just don't do it. There's too much shit that can happen. Or crap that can happen. All right? Not to mention, when you throw somebody on the ground, that's a death sentence. It immediately is. The ground hits harder than you. It does. And when that human doesn't have control of how they hit the ground, it's not, I've seen it go really, really bad a lot. So I'm looking at the situation as a whole, and I'm sorry, but all of you need to oust this Mike guy. Because one, he's not that tough. He's not. If you're in the fitness industry and not a fighter, you're not a fighter. You're not. I don't claim to be a fighter. I claim to be somebody who had a hard job for a long time, made a decent amount of money doing it, and no longer has to do that thing. Right? And it did, in fact, put me in violent altercations frequently. You learn how to deal with those things. Or you learn they're not for you. But that doesn't make me a tough guy. It doesn't. But what it also doesn't make me, or any guy that looks remotely like me, or looks remotely like Mike Van Wick, it doesn't make them him. That guy was soft as mashed potatoes the moment he was born. And unfortunately, it carried over. Now, again, a man having an aggressive outburst in public, I don't think that's a weak man. That's not a sign of weakness. A man having an aggressive outburst to an individual who, unless, I mean, I guess if you're a UFC lightweight, like, pro fighter, like, yeah, probably would have just welcomed it and whooped his ass. However, unless, like, that's the situation, it just doesn't look good. And I already know, looking the way I do, anytime I have any kind of emotional display in public, whatever it's going to be is going to be a million times more enjoyable, because big, happy people laughing and doing things people like to watch. I don't know. It's like a dancing bear, I guess. But just like that, if I do anything negative in public, it's magnified by 1,000. And with my age, I've luckily kind of gotten to a point where I'm like, I care what my people think of me. However, I already know, walking through a store, unless I have my daughter with me, or unless I'm with my family, people are going to look at you and they're going to make certain judgments. And they're going to make certain judgments based off this guy, Mike. And that really sucks, because he's not tough. He is not this big explosive force that he just displayed, where he took a man by surprise, who also doesn't claim to be a tough guy, doesn't claim to be a fighter, isn't a fighter, and just so happens to be significantly smaller, and also had no reason to suspect that was coming. I'm asking you guys, don't judge us because of this guy. Don't judge us because of that douche canoe who's got all the tattoos, has probably never been in a fight in a day in his life, and talks about his jail time, but won't step up to people who are, honestly, people who can look him in the eye. Like, those videos are out there on YouTube. That guy just wants nothing to do with those. So, or those people. Guys, please, forget about him. Forget about him. Support Jeff, obviously. Don't forget it happened. But forget about Mike Van Wick. He doesn't deserve your time. And any guy out there who might not exactly be feeling powerful right now, because that's who those guys appeal to. Mike Van Wick, they appeal to people who don't feel powerful. That's who they appeal to. And that's just wrong. It shouldn't be that way. It really, I'm sorry, I keep scratching my leg, guys. I got bit by a mosquito. It's pretty rough. It shouldn't be that way. But that's who those guys appeal to. The people who don't know who they are. The people who want what they think is that level of respect, and not, oh, no one's gonna speak against me. I'm like, that's not what that is. And I truly encourage you, look elsewhere. Like, look elsewhere. And that's not to say all guys that look like Mike don't have positive things to offer. But guys like Mike, we need to forget about them as quickly as we thought about them.